So today we're going to talk first of all about the Google Assistant and specifically how you can make apps for that and also voiceify your existing web and Android apps. A bit about myself. My name is Eliza Camber and I work for Explicity, which is a creative tech agency in the Netherlands. I am a Google developer expert on the Google Assistant and also a travel addict when this is possible. If you want to follow along or if you want to find this presentation again at any point, this is going to be the link for the slide deck. I'm also going to be posting this on my Twitter if you want to find it again. So today's agenda, first of all, we're going to see why it's important, why voice is important, and why you should bother about making apps for it. Then we're going to talk about the voice user interaction or the VUI. It's very it's the user interaction for the equivalent of the graphic user interfaces that we have when you have a screen. But we're also going to see how you can actually design for it. Then we're going to see the Actions Builder, which is actually the platform where you can create all the conversational apps. We're going to see how you can voiceify your existing web and Android apps. And we're going to have some time for questions at the end. So virtual assistants, it's basically for companies, theoretically, but practically it's just two. It's Amazon and Google. So this is already for 3 years ago, and four, sorry. Both of these companies win and lose ground every time. So it's not just that Alexa or Amazon or Google is big at this yet. They're both desperately trying to embed their assistant, though, in every platform that there is over there. So at the CES 2018, the assistants were a big thing, like a huge thing. And you can see here that the strategy, as they said, for the Alexa, for instance, is that we want Alexa everywhere. But what happened after that? So 2021, and this is the compound annual growth rate that is at 12%. And then that translates to a 4.12 billion incremental growth. So as you can see, during those 3 years, it actually accelerated massively and it turned out pretty well. And for this year's growth, it was at the 7.65. But let's see what happened at the CES that happened this year. So if you don't know, the CES is one of the biggest technological events out there, and all of the big companies are actually making massive announcements there. So Google Assistant and Alexa were invisible and everywhere at the CES. But what does that mean? Amazon and Google opted to skip joining the list of exhibitors at this year's all-digital CES, but their respective voice assistants erased what would normally be a glaring gap in the event's list. Alexa and Google Assistant, it appeared over and over as close to 2,000 companies showcased their products. This year has decisively proven that Alexa and Google Assistant no longer require active boosting of the show to play a part. Attendees can hear the voice assistants everywhere. So from standalone devices to cars, to earphones, and even bathtubs, you name it, it's there. And it's within an earshot to hear what you're saying. But why do all of the companies, and mostly those two, trying so desperately to get their assistant within an earshot? Well, it's not really a secret. It's more natural for us to actually talk to something or someone than go grab a screen and start typing to that. This is the first thing that we know how to communicate. This is the first thing that we learn in our lives to begin with. And because time is money and you don't have to stop whatever you're doing when you're talking to a device, and I mean whatever you're doing, Voice is just a much more simpler interaction with devices. And this is why we'd rather repeat 3 times what we say than actually get out of the bed and get our phone and tap on something or trying to find something online. But why should I, as a developer, care about? Well, for the same way that for the same reason that you cared when you started building mobile apps, for instance, or even apps for wearables. It's just a new thing. Siri, Cortana, Alexa, and Google Assistant are just the beginning. Voice is the future. But how difficult is to build something for voice? So let's say an example over here. If I have the screen and I can just tap on something, then it's straightforward. It's either the first button or the second button. But if I have to communicate which button that you should actually tap on, then I could say tap on the button that says 1, or #1, or the blue button, or the top button, or a million other new commands. And this is all something that a human would understand very easily, but a machine, not that much. So we have a new user interface, and it's called the voice user interface. It's much more different from the graphic user interface that we had with the screens, but the principles are pretty much the same. And the fact that we don't have a graphic user interface doesn't actually mean that we don't need to design. Actually, it's the exactly opposite. We need to design even more, because now it's not that easy for the user to see where he or she should go to. So because the conversation is something that we start to do from the very early on in our lives, there are also some conversational basics that we don't know that we actually know. And those are the turn taking, context, threading, and reading between the lines. And those are also the 4 main things that the assistants or any voice app actually struggles with. It's something that it's very natural to the humans, but the machines cannot really properly handle yet. Of course, there are a lot of things that you can do to make that better, but this is what we're designing for, because we need to make sure that the lack of those 4 principles is not going to be something breaking for the user interaction. So conversational apps are also called agents, and those that are specifically for the Google Assistant are called Google Actions. And those actions are just modules of the language natural understanding process. Let's see how the flow is. So the user will just give the input. This is going to be either through the voice or through the keyboard. And then we're going to the actions on Google. And this is what we're building, like the yellow part over there. So the actions on Google will get the query, and then it will turn into an intent of the user. And that intent will get you actionable data. That data you can manipulate through code, either get more information from the database or from the external APIs, and then you can respond to the user through the output. There are quite a few steps when we design for a voice user interface. And I'm not going to go into the details of everything, but there is a great documentation. I'll show you the link later on. We're just going to see some very basic steps when we're starting to build a voice or a conversational app. So first of all, we need to write down all the actions that our actions on Google should do. After that, we need to create a diagram. And this is just a decision tree for the actions. Then you have to decide if your app actually needs a backend, like if you need something from a database, for instance, some more information. Then we're going to design our UX. We're going to create the backbone of the app. Then we're going to create the actions on the actions builder. We're going to test this. Then we're going to connect the webhook, and then we're going to test again. So we're going to see some of those steps, but not very much in depth. Let's start with the first one. So let's assume that we have an agent or conversational app that it's a tour agency guide. So over there, like we want to have some actions, like we wanted to be able to fulfill some of those actions. So what we're going to do first is that we're going to write down all of the actions that we wanted to do. So this is, for instance, to book a tour or to find available tours or to find information about specific tours or a monument or timetables or pickup points and probably a million more. And you have to decide on which of those you have to start first. So you don't want to make something massive altogether. You want to break it into smaller parts first and make sure that those individual parts actually work and do some error handling before you continue on. After that, we're going to create the diagram that we saw, like the decision tree. So first of all, we have some entry points. The entry point that we see over here is the available tours, for instance. Do you need available tours? Yes or no? What do you do when the user says yes or when the user say no? And you're going to start from some very basic actions from over here. And as you continue with the rest of the steps that we're going to see later on, you will continue to iterate and develop this decision tree to actually cover all of your use cases. This also is going to be translated basically to the code that you're going to need later on. So if you have a compact structure, like a decision tree, then it's going to be much easier to start with that to the coding part. And then the chances are that you're not going to be missing any massive error handling when you have this decision tree. Then we said that we are going to be deciding on the backend. So if I have a virtual agent or a virtual assistant for a tour agency, then we do need a webhook because we need to get, for instance, all the available tours. And we're going to use the inline editor that the Actions on Google is offering. We're going to see that later on. And then we have to design the UX, which is the most important step from the entire design process. So there's still a few steps over here. So first of all, we have to pick the right use cases, and then we have to write them down. We create the persona of that agent from those use cases. Then we write some simple dialogues. We test it out with other people as well, so that like when we ask something, maybe we get a response that you're actually not expecting, and then you can just continue to develop your decision tree, and then we build on top of that. So what are the good use cases? So before seeing, well, to actually understand what a right use case is, we need to understand what the wrong ones are. So if you ask for something, what's your frequent flyer number? Like, you don't want to ask questions that are optional. Sure, I'll book the flight. I need your frequent flyer number first. You don't want to block an action for optional information, like the postcode, for instance. Like, you can find these things with other information. To check if this product is compatible with your PC, go to settings, blah, 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 blah. Well, I don't need a machine to tell me what to do if I have to turn on my computer. You need to have actions that actually make sense to have a conversation about them. To verify, tap on the top of the Google Home device. I mean, yes, these are quite extreme, but they're not really as extreme as they seem right now. So when you build a conversational app, you have to optimize for these three things. So first of all, speed, how fast you can get your user to the data that they're asking for, the simplicity of the interaction, and finally, the hands-free interaction. So we have use cases, and for creating use cases, you first need to create a few like simple users. So here, for instance, I have a Mary and she's CEO, and there are two scenarios for booking tours. The more of those use cases you have, the easiest it will be to actually find out which, of course, actions are important to start with. And then you can easily eliminate some of the mistakes that we saw before, like getting optional data, for instance. Then we have to create the persona of our agent. And the persona of our agent is basically the characteristics of it. Like, is it going to be cheerful? Is it going to be formal? It really depends on the use cases that we have. So for this agent, for instance, it has to be formal because the target audience is adults, basically. It has to have a very simple language. It has to be suitable for tourists. Tourists are not always very comfortable with the specific language that we chose. And it has to be engaging and fun. Like it's at the end, they're choosing this to have fun. It's a boat ride. It has to be fun. And maybe you can have some fun facts, for instance, for history or for some art lovers. And we then have to write dialogues for that. So you write sample dialogues for each of those use cases. And then you also write some sample dialogues for some error handling. So if you ask me, at what time do you want me to pick you up? And I say on Tuesday, this is something that your agent should be able to handle and to be able to repair this conversation. So in this example, I have the happy path. Hi, I'm your guided tour assistant. How can I help you? Is there a tour available for Wednesday at 5? Sure. It is a boat tour going through all the major monuments in Amsterdam. Pickup point is the central station. Book one ticket. Done. Booked a ticket for the Amsterdam boat trip for this Wednesday at 5 p.m. And you can see here that even if this is the happy path, you still have to confirm with the user that actually what they chose is what your agent understood as well. This is the link that I was telling you about. So we have the developers.google.com in the assistant. And it goes from hero to zero. Like even if you're new to the conversational design or you're going to the error handling, this is the place that you can see anything design related. So it's showtime. And I'm going to go over here. If you can give me 1 second, please. All right. So this is the first thing that you see. I created a brand new project over here. And this is the very first thing that you're going to see when you create an actions from the actions builder. So a few things first. We have the scene. And this scene is the actions that we said before. So a scene would be, for instance, the available tours that we're going to create. Another scene could have been the information about the pickup points and stuff like this. So all of the actions need to have a scene. We also need to have a scene for a welcome and a goodbye. We then have some custom intents, which is basically when you ask something for the user and you're expecting back an answer, the custom intents is what you're going to have over there. And we also have some system intents that the user the console is giving us. So we have the no match, for instance. If the user said something that doesn't match any of your scenes, we have the no input or the cancel. And this is already pre-made for you. And finally, we have the types, and the types are entities. So if I had available tours, for instance, and the one was a boat and the other one was a walking tour, then the boat and the walking would both be types. It's the parameters that we're trying to get from the user in order to understand what they're trying to do. So we're going to go over here and we're going to create a new scene. I'm going to say it available tours. All right. And I'm also going to create one that it's going to be a welcome screen. So I'm going to stay here in the main invocation. The main invocation is when you're the user says like, talk to my app, for instance, and this is where it's getting invoked. So if we test this now, it's not going to do anything, and I can test that actually for you, and you will see that it's just going to end the conversation. The first build takes a while. Okay, that's too much a while. Let's create over here, and let's hope that it's going to get better. So we go to the main invocation, and here we can see that when I say like, okay, talk to my test app, it's going to say this over here. So the variant speech, start building your action by defining a main invocation. So instead of here, it's going to be a hello, I'm your tour agent. I forgot to escape that. Fine. Your tour agent. And then we don't want this to end the conversation. So what we're trying to go, what we will do is that we're going to go to the transition. And the transition is the action, what will happen, where it will go when this speech part is done. So here we are going to go to the welcome. And if I save this, now if I am going to talk to it and say like, okay, talk to my test app, instead of just ending the conversation, it's going to go to the welcome scene. So the welcome scene, of course, doesn't do anything yet. So if I say on enter, send prompts, I'm going to do the JSON over here. So this is what it will say right now. And let's say, do you want the available tours? And we're going to save this. And then we, well, for this one, we're going to handle the two situations. If the user says yes, and if the user says no. So we are going to handle the user intent. It's going to be a yes. And the yes, it's going to transition to the available tours. And then we're also going to create one for no. And this is going to end the conversation. Normally, we would have another scene over there that I would say like at least a goodbye. But for the demo's sake, I'm just going to save it like this. So if I put over here on enter, it should say something. Okay, let's say fetching available tours. All right, and let's go test this one now. Finally. Okay, so I am going to talk to my test app. And it does not want to. Nope. Okay. So thankfully, I did create a backup project. And I hope that this one will work.
All right, let's get the test version of my test app. Hi, I'm your guided tours assistant. Do you need the available tours?
So if I tap over here, yes.
Fetching the available tours. I found 3 available tours for today.
So this is a few steps further than I want to show you, but we're going to see that now. So this is the same thing that I had before. So if we go to the welcome, we're just handling the intents and we send those to the available tours. And what we did before is that on the enter, we had the fetching the available tours prompt. So we said, though, that we actually have to fetch that. And we can't do that through this interface over here. So what we do is that we call the webhook that we have over here. And you can use either the inline editor or you can use any URL webhook that you want. So here we have, let me show you first the call the webhook. You just give a name over here. I named it availability. So when I go to the webhook now, app handle availability, and then it also says this one. So it will also say I found 3 available tours for today. And this is how you basically switch between your actions builder and your webhook. And as you can see, it's actually very easy. And one last thing that I wanted to show you is that if you noticed over here in my test.
All right, let's get the test version of my test app. Hi, I'm your guided tours assistant. Do you need the available tours?
So if you see over here, there are 2 suggestion sheets. And these are super easy to actually add over there. So what you have to do is that you just go to your welcome intent, which is the first thing to be called. And here, nope, where is it? Symptoms, okay. So you go over here, and as you see, instead of just having the speech, you also have the suggestions over here. And this can be any, like this one is a yes and a no. You can also have a cancel or whatever. To add those, you actually have to just click insert over here. So last symbol, for instance, and the editor will just add it for you over there, and you don't really have to do anything else. And that would be just the demo, a very short demo, as you can imagine, for the actions builder. And I'm going to continue over here with the presentation. We also said that we do have ways to voiceify basically our web apps and our Android apps. And why would we do that? Because as we said, we can have conversational apps, but only if it actually makes sense. Like if the user needs to have a screen, for instance, it doesn't really make sense for us to just have a conversation with them. Because what if you need to show images, for instance, if you have a tutorial? So let's first see how you can voiceify your web applications. We have 3 examples over here, a news, a recipes, and podcasts. So for the news, you can see that it shows as a snippet over there. Then for the recipes, it's basically just the same, but you can also send it to another display. And then for the podcast, you can finally just click play. How you do that is that you send structural data. So you structure your data in that way that Google understands it, and they automatically create a conversational app for you. For the content types that you can do that is the podcast, the recipes, and the news that we saw before, the frequently asked questions, and how-to guides. This is also a how-to guide. So you see that at the beginning, we have the start the tutorial. So it's basically just an overview of whatever you will need or how much time it will cost you. And then when you start the tutorial, it will show you an image, and a step-to-step guide. And this is automatically created if you structure your data correctly, so that Google just fetch that and show it to the user. And in between of the web and the conversational apps, we have something that it's called an interaction canvas. And the interaction canvas, it's not just like the snippets or the widgets that we saw before within the assistant conversation, but it's a full screen experience for the user. So it has two components. It has a conversational app that you can build with the Action Builder, as I did for the available tours, for instance. And it also has a web app. So it has a front-end web app which customizes the visuals and it shows everything to the user. So how it works is that if I say turn the screen blue, for instance, the actions on Google, well, the conversational action is going to get the intent of the user, and it's going to extract the values that I wanted as it did before. The natural language understanding process is then going to switch to a callback, and that callback is going to call your interaction canvas API, which is within your web app. So once the web app gets this callback, the on-update callback will also get any data that you sent through the conversational app. And then it will just, once it's loaded, it will update the UI according to what the user has asked. And here is an example.
Which difficulty do you want to play? Normal. I like normal too. All right, let's see the drawings. Awesome. Vegetable. Marathon. Great job. That's impressive.
So you can see that every interaction is hands-free, and the user doesn't have to do anything. They just talk to it, and it will understand what the user is saying, and then it will automatically switches to the web app, and the web app will get that intent from the conversational app and actually do what the user has asked. And we also have a way for making the Android apps visible for the Google Assistant. And there are 3 ways in doing this. So first of all, we can display the app information on Google interfaces, which is the widgets, like we saw earlier for the web apps as well. Then we can launch features from the Assistant. So basically, you deep link to one part in the Android application. And you can also suggest voice shortcuts from the assistant. So then you just get the context, and next time that the user wants something to be completed, then you can just remember how they did it before and just get that voice command from the user and basically deep link again on that specific part. So the example for the first one, the widgets, is this one. So while you're talking to the assistant, it just shows a widget over there. And for the second one, the deep linking, it shows like this. So it opens the application with the data that the user provided already filled in. So the amount for in this instance and the name. And finally, this is how you can create your own dynamic shortcuts. So you can suggest to your user that they can check the bits quickly with a shortcut. And then you just inform them that, okay, so next time just say, hey, Google, show my beats. It will just show your bits over there. This is also the flow. You can see that it's not very different from what we already saw for the web. So basically, the user will say something, the Google Assistant and the conversational apps will, well, we don't really have conversational apps over here. The Google Assistant and the SDK will just take care of everything. So then it will open your shortcuts.xml in your application. You will there get the intent and the data. and also how you want this to be fulfilled, if you want to just show a widget or if you want to open your application. And then your Android app will tell basically the Google Assistant what it should do. So before wrapping this up, I would like to take any questions if you have.
Okay, thanks so much, Eliza, for that amazing talk. I learned so much. I'm sure everyone did. So I'm sure we have a couple of questions. The first one is that can we change the voices used during testing?
Yes, you can. I don't remember exactly how many voices there are available, but you can change the voices during that. And there is also one new, well, not new, but one more feature that is called the SSML. So basically, it's a markup for voice, and you can you can instruct the voice where it should pause or where it should emphasize, where it's like a paragraph change, for instance, so it will pause longer and stuff like this.
Awesome. Thank you for the answer. And then the second one is if we have a backend service fulfilling the webhook that relies on an access token, can this be handled by the AOG console or do we have to use something like an API key?
Well, the access token will be, I actually don't know the answer for this one. I can check that out though, and if you can drop me a line somewhere that I can reply back, I'll happily ask someone for this one.
Okay, nice. Thank you so much. And then the other one is what is your favorite AOG and what have you developed yourself that you're proud of?
I don't really have a favorite action. I really love some of the games that it has, but depending on what you want to do, then this is your favorite action at that point. So, for instance, I love when I can just tell Google to start my podcasts. For me, this is the one interaction that I always like to do hands-free, because when I listen to my podcast, I'm always doing something or I'm on the move. Something that I've developed more of myself. There are a few things that I've done for our office, but unfortunately, those are under NDA. But I did make one app for myself, and this was basically to keep track of my dog's health. So when he should be getting his pills, when is his next vaccination, and sending reminders and stuff like this. So it was both a conversational app, but also mostly an Android app.
Wow, that's cool. I mean, I think, okay, we have another question from Katlejo. It says, can we specify the default language, like English or Zulu?
There are many languages that are supported. I'm not quite sure about Zulu, but yes, you can. When I switch back to my slides, actually, or to sharing my screen, I will show you that you can actually have the default language set to something different. But I also have multiple languages over there.
Awesome. Okay, another one is it possible to condition the device to someone's specific voice for the device to execute the command?
Some specific voice. I don't know. I haven't done that. I would be quite surprised if that could happen. Let me check real quick. No. So you set the voice through the settings, so there is no way for it to interact with your code.
Nice. Thank you for the answers. I think that should be all with the questions. I'm not sure if there's
All
any
right.
last one.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I think that's Okay, so
Okay.
we have the last one, I think. Can we split the webhook to multiple regions?
No, but you can have you can short this out on your own server and then just set this as your webhook. So that should take care of everything else.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Eliza.
All
That
right.
was really amazing. Yeah,
Thank you. I'll go back to my screens for just 1 minute to wrap it up, if that's all right.
nice. That's okay.
Okay. Um, so over here, first of all, this is how you set the voice. As I said before, it's under the settings. So you can set it over here. And from here, you can also set the voices that you want. And if you go to the language settings, then you should see a lot of those. Zulu is not over here, though. Sorry for that. But you can also select multiple, as you can see. And if there are multiple locales, then you can just set it over here. And then you can just go over here and translate the languages so that, like the prompts, for instance, you don't have to go through the builder to set everything up. Okay, so I'll just go back and let's see all that we learned today. So first of all, we learned why voice is important, and it is the future, and there are multiple studies and data to actually support this. Then we learned about the voice user interface and how we can actually design for an interface that there is no graphic, there is no screen. Then we saw the Actions Builder and how we can easily create our own conversational apps with the Actions Builder. Then we saw how we can voiceify our web and Android apps. And finally, yeah, I'll be around for any more questions that you have. You can find me also over here. And thank you very much for today's, for having me here today.
Thank you, Eliza. It was really amazing to have you talk to us.